Plenty to expect in this segment as President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to close the 9th ANC KwaZulu-Natal conference after some confusion over whether he would be able to attend. Earlier the morning, newly elected chairperson Siboniso Duma confirmed that Ramaphosa wouldn't be able to arrive because of other commitments. Delegates have concluded the nomination of the new Provincial Executive Committee members and are expected to vote later today. Now, Newzroom Afrika senior politics reporter Ziyanda Ngcobo is at the Olive Convention Centre in Durban for us. Ziyanda, very good afternoon to you. The word is out. President Cyril Ramaphosa will indeed be making the closing statement at that conference. Talk to us about the climate and the atmosphere ahead of his closing remarks.
It's a very interesting thing, Paul, this issue of the president not arriving and now arriving to close then this provincial conference. Let's take it back to Friday when this question of whether or not President Cyril Ramaphosa would be closing the conference was posed to Acting Secretary General Paul Mashatile, who at the time had said, as far as he knows, the president is confirmed to come and close the conference, but government has so many activities, so they're basically hinting that there is a possibility of him not coming. The same could also be said about the now former Provincial Secretary Mdumiseni Ntuli, who basically said it's not mandatory really for the president to open and or close any of these conferences. However, you'll recall that on Friday afternoon when Paul Mashatile was called to the podium, he was basically, sent a message through the song Wenze Nuzoma, and this was taken as a sign that, this is in relation to just how much hostility the Gauteng province in around 2016 had showed towards former President Jacob Zuma, where they were the first province to call for him to step down. They were consistently actually joining marches against the former president. So there was a sense then, Paul, that the former president would probably face or befall the same fate as Paul Mashatile, where he's drowned out by chance of Wenzenu Zuma. What did Zuma do? However, this morning then, Siboniso Duma, the newly elected chairperson, saying that the president has other commitments. Now later on this afternoon, it was said that he is coming. Some have interpreted this as him actually reading the room to say he will look weak, Paul, if he doesn't come and address the biggest province of the ANC, if he doesn't come and face even those who may be his detractors. We don't know if that is real or perceived. And that he must be able to speak to the people within his own political party. I mean, if you're facing criticism and facing lots of questions regarding the Pala Pala farm gate, as it's now dubbed, why can't you also come and speak then to people who elected you to become ANC president?
I suppose, Ziyanda, the stakes are pretty high, of course, looking at how this conference started and the different factions and slates that were hoping to emerge victorious. The so-called Taliban faction is now in charge.
And that's another thing, isn't it, Paul, that real or perceived, if the president did continue with, the initial position that he wouldn't come, it would have also been seen as though the president doesn't want to come because his faction did not emerge. However, let's also then qualify this. I think it's more nuanced than that, because if you look at the top five, I'd say look at the newly elected provincial treasurer, Dr. Ntuthuko Mahlaba. He used to be the chairperson of the Emalahleni region, and he at the time in the run-up to Nasrec was the only regional chairperson in this province of KwaZulu-Natal to support and endorse Ramaphosa ahead of the Nasrec conference. And so, it's not always necessarily black or white when it comes to this issue of faction. So, there were other leaders as well on the current top 5 officials that also had backed then President Cyril Ramaphosa, including the likes of Begum Tolo as well. Whether or not then that is still the same, 2017 was 5 years ago, the conditions might have changed. But also, Mpo, this issue of, the president not speaking, I remember distinctly that President Cyril Ramaphosa in his ANC presidential campaign was given absolutely no platform in this province of KwaZulu-Natal to campaign. Instead, he used the platforms offered to him by the alliance partners, COSATU and the SACP, with Red October rallies to continue his campaign. And him not coming could also be perceived as being weak, because you are now the president, so you were able to emerge, without the full backing of KwaZulu-Natal to become president of the ANC. You are now president. It's a new conference. There's newly elected leadership, and whether or not that leadership is fully endorsing you for this next conference is neither here nor there. How much power then have you consolidated since that last 2017 conference where you went in as an underdog? And so these are some of the questions then I think that were raised, and what we understand to be happening right now, Mpo, because the delegates were on a lunch break, is that the national officials were debating whether to have him close the conference and then continue with the voting of PEC members, or to start that process of voting and then have the president close this 9th elective conference.
And one could say perhaps, it could be rather difficult terrain in the build-up to the conference in December, and also looking at the work that needs to be done and catching up, so to speak, in KwaZulu-Natal when it comes to the numbers, because in all essence it is all a numbers game.
It is a numbers game, and Paul, however, in terms of process, really, you can't be dictated to by what you expect to be the outcomes of the elective conference, the 55th National Conference. President Ramaphosa is still the president of the ANC and not the president of factions, and this is what the party is always trying to drum, through their media briefings to the public. So if that is really the case, then they should live up to that, and which is exactly then part of the criticism that was raised when initially Siboniso Duma had said that the president had called in the early hours of this morning, I should say, to congratulate them on their new appointments, sent a letter, and had said that he won't be able to close conference because of other commitments. Whether or not, it's either Siboniso Duma may have gotten it wrong or may not have disseminated the right information, or whether it's because then the president changed his mind. It's unclear at this stage, but what we do know is that preparations are well underway for his arrival.
Very well. Let's leave it there for now. Senior politics reporter Ziyanda Ngcobo giving us a sense of some of the expectations ahead of President Cyril Ramaphosa's closing statement. He's expected to deliver those closing remarks during the course of this afternoon.